Okay, so I've sort of switched gears here. I've decided that maybe it's a good move to go ahead and put some of these cast shadows in so that we can get some stronger darks. They're mostly on this horse, and then we could put some stronger darks here in the muzzle, maybe a little bit in the mane, so that gets us started. It'll be, I think, a little bit easier then to get adequate midtones in. You can see right now my midtones are very weak. I just put in a base kind of bit of color. So that's got to get quite a bit darker. And then you can see this is part of the cast shadow. Well, let's talk about cast shadows here just a minute. And one of the things when you're working is that if you have a cast shadow, it's pretty much the same value all the way through. That's not perfectly exactly true, but it's sort of that way. Let's put it like that. There's actually a variation in this shadow. Yeah, there are variations within this shadow. But the major thing is that a cast shadow gives you kind of a design that is a bit abstracted. It follows some of the shape of the horse and some of the shape of the halter. It does a little bit of both, and so it makes a sort of abstracted effect. And you can use that to make better art because that has a real nice effect on the final painting. And you'll notice that it also tells us a lot about the shaping of the horse. There is more of a bulge here, and then there's a lower area here on the horse's head. And we know that because even though this is straight, that curves around. And we know it intuitively without having to go through a verbal explanation to ourselves every time we see that. We know that's what that is. Right here you can see that the bottom part of the shadow right here curves around like that until it touches this area of the bridle. That's part of the same thing. Up here we have a strong cast shadow, and you can again see it follow the contours, and then it gets lost. There's a little bit of a soft edge, and there's more shadow. I think that's shadow. It almost looks like it's part of that halter, but I'm not positive. So we're going to do some of that, and then we're going to put more shadows in the muzzle. And what that's going to do is that's going to get us some stronger darks in there that'll make this easier to put in some midtones. Sometimes when everything's light, if you go and you make just the next thing just a little bit darker and the next thing a little bit darker, and you think you've really got it, and then when you put in a really strong dark, whoa, all of a sudden you realize that you've got to do a whole lot of this over because it's not dark enough. So having some good darks in there helps. And we've got to start on some darks here. Okay, so we are working with Quin Burnt Scarlet. I've got Quin Burnt Scarlet. I have got Prussian Blue, and I've got Quin Gold. And so what we need is we need a really dark brown. We don't want just a gray here. We want a dark brown. It's a little on the grayish side of a brown, but it's a brown. So it looks cooler because it's next to this almost yellowish brown, light brown here. What brown really is, if you think about it. Oh, by the way, I put this paint out earlier so that it would be a little bit stronger because I wanted some fairly strong color. It's almost dried up in some places. So I've got my scarlet. Let's pick up some Quin Gold. And yes, some of this color is getting mixed a little bit together. That's just to my advantage later. So you can see I have this orangey red color here. Now, the trick is, the only difference between brown and gray is that brown has got less blue in it. So if you put enough blue in it, you balance all three colors out and it becomes gray. But if you only put a little blue in there to mute these other colors, it starts to get browner. So let's just pick up a little of this at a time. Oh, that might be enough. That might be too much. Okay. Whoa, so what do I have here? This is pretty dark, but it's hard to tell. I really need to see it on paper. Now that's a nice, dark, rich brown. Oh, I think that's going to suit me pretty well. Let's get a round brush for this. And I'm not going to be softening any edges, but I'll keep this flat here handy because I might change my mind. So I actually have this area mapped out here. I still need to refer to this because I might not make sense out of this if I don't. But you can see that this shape has an opening in it. It's that opening right here. And whoops, I don't have in my drawing this little bit of shadow right there. I think I'll put it in first. Since I don't have it drawn, I don't want to forget it. And you remember we have masking going here, so that's makes the whole process easier. This is strong paint, but it's juicy enough that it can flow down off the brush. That also means that this will read more as a solid, because if it wasn't juicy and I had separate marks where I dabbed, then it wouldn't look like a cast shadow. Now, if I wanted to, not saying I do want to, but if I wanted to, I could come up in here where I've got a little bit more blue and change the color of the shadow just a little bit, just to make it more interesting. I don't feel a real need to in terms of the subject matter. And this is going to come on over here, curve around, and stop. Okay, so what else do we have? Well, of course I don't have my pencil. Okay. I'm going to draw this first to make it easier. I don't have this drawn on mine. Here's the shadow, comes down here, and then you can see as the temple area kind of has a concave area there, so you get a different shape. And then it comes down here, and that's almost no shadow along here. That's actually the inside of the bridle. That might be too, but I'm going to make it. I see something dark along there. I'll just go ahead and make it anyway. And I can tell right here that it's following the temple. Oops, I exaggerated that just a tad. The horse will live over it. Oops. That'll do. And maybe a little shadow there. And then we have this nice shadow that is coming. Oh, let's see. It's coming right along here. And then what it does is okay, here's where I got to soften an edge. Let's get that now. I'll explain in a minute. Whoops. I made a little bump that shouldn't exist there. All right. Okay, so I'll explain here. This is where this goes into this soft edge and just sort of disappears. I still don't know what that is. I'm just going to make it with this anyway. I'll make it come this far. You know, sometimes you just got to make a command decision here and go with it. Those of you who know horses better probably know what this halter looks like better than I do. I'm going to soften this edge right there too. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's see, where else do we need a really dark area? Right here on the coat's head, right there. There's an extra strong shadow where his eye area runs in behind the mother's, I don't know what to call the mother's, this part of the mother. So I'll go ahead and put that in. Actually, should soften that. That really shouldn't be there. Okay, we'll do that. We could spend a little time. This area around the eyes is more of a gray tone, and we need to put a lot of shadow in here. It needs to be that color. Let's do a little bit on the ears. I think I'll thin this down just a little bit. This whole ear is way darker. It's got a lighter area in it, but for the most part, it's a pretty dark thing. And it needs some black or very dark gray mixed into it too. But to simplify the process, just put the brown in. We'll just make the whole ear, except for that one little spot, a darker brown. And you can see I've thinned the paint out just a little bit. It's not as dark as this down here quite. And then we'll do our, remember our water neutral brush here. Almost water neutral. It's got a little water in it. There. Okay, it's got a little flow to it. Let's soften this edge too. I need to take a break. Okay, resuming the video. This ear over here is lighter on the back. Let's go ahead and use some of the same color. And we'll darken the tip here, which is really needs some black or dark gray in it later. And we'll come down like that. Whoops, I'm getting a little bit sloppy here. And we'll take our water neutral brush. Whoops, wrong brush. We'll make our water neutral brush because we need to soften this area here. There, that's nice. So the main objective is to get some darks in. Now the coat we had already darkened some more. Let's put a few darks in just to be consistent. Here's a dark area on the ear. Oh, and just something like this. I don't know horses that well. So I may be misinterpreting part of him. Now what I'm doing is I'm slipping into areas where I'm softening edges. That hadn't been my original intent. When you get started painting though and a part calls you, go ahead and go there. If it calls you, you're probably ready for it. If you have to think what to do next, you're not quite in the zone yet. This ear is dark. Okay, let's stop with that and let's change up colors. I'm going to keep this mix here. I'm going to need a lot more of it later, but I may change it up a little bit. But I want that as sort of to keep me seeing exactly what color I want. So I am still, somehow or another, a little short on paint. Oh, Quinburnt Scarlet. Knew something was wrong. Okay, and let's get a little more Prussian blue out here, because we're going to mix something that's more neutral, and we're going to need more Prussian blue. Okay, let's see. So because I've had water sitting in my palette for a while, I can mix up some pretty strong color. Be sure when you start this that you've already had water sitting in your palette for a while. So let's put the red and the blue together. What kind of color does that make without the yellow? You know, we think of red and blue as making purple, but... And this has a little bit of a purplish quality, but see, it's very, very dull. Because Prussian blue is not bluish enough. It's got a little yellow in it. And Quinburnt Scarlet has a lot of yellow in it. So you put them together, that really makes a luscious kind of a dark. Damn, I'd like to use that. I don't think I will yet, though. I think, okay, I want a little more Prussian blue in here. Because we're really mixing, my intent was to mix a gray. Damn, I like that so much, I want to find a way to use that. Just not this minute. So I've got it over here, got my color note. So a little more blue in there. And then let's pick up some Quin Gold. We probably won't need a lot of Quin Gold. I think we're going to need more blue. That's a pretty neutral gray. I want a little more blue in it. Your gray doesn't need to match my gray. And you may have a different preference. Please follow your preferences. You know, that's what makes our art have variation. That's why we're not all craftsmen, we're artists. Okay, maybe that. It's a little bluish. And fortunately, I don't have to go change water. Okay, let's think about this. What I would like to do now is make some stronger darks here on the muzzle. And this piece of paper is curling up where I can't see it. Let's try to make it cooperate a little bit better. There, that's better. I don't know how long it'll last. So I'm going to pre-wet this area. And that's probably dry enough I don't have to worry about it this time. I'm going to just pre-wet the whole muzzle. Almost. About like that. Okay, so that's like really sloshy wet. I'm not going to tilt it so you can watch it run, but I got it really, really wet. And I might just, let's see, what can we talk about? Okay, while we're waiting. You will notice that the tongue, the shadows on the tongue are really a grayed pink. There's a lot of gray tone in that pink. So we'll be mixing that here in a little bit. All right, so that's probably been long enough. Let's squeeze the brush out. You might want to tilt it, you know, check how much water is there. But I just want to get the excess water off because this is a small area. I don't want paint to just flow everywhere. I want to have a lot of control here. So you can see that this area right here and in the muzzle and right there and, oh, I've already got that spot. Those are all darker. Actually, this area here on the chin part is darker than up above it. I've got mine a little bit darker than in the picture, but what I'm going to, up here, but what I'm going to do to contrast them is I'm just going to make that a little bit darker. I could lift this, but I'm not going to. So, okay, I'm going to squeeze the brush out and pick up a little bit of paint here. Let's see what we get. Let's see how it acts, because we may have to change what we're doing depending on how the paint acts. I think it needs to be a little darker, but I'm good with how it's acting. Okay, then all of this, if this edge is too hard, it looks mechanical, and we don't want that. This area right in here might have a little more dark in it. Up here, let's put in a little bit of areas. We want this to bleed over here. There's a little bit of a shadow right across there. Okay, so that all looks kind of out of control because it is. Oh, let's see, a little more dark right there. So now let's wash the brush out. Let's call this water neutral, but it is water neutral, but it's got a lot of the water taken out of it. It's not really squeezed out either. So now I could come in, and mostly I want to subtract some of the paint. I want to pull some of the paint away as I kind of shift it around. And so I want the brush to have less water in it so that it will pull up some of the water. Let's wash it out again. So that it'll pull up some of the paint. Water and paint. Okay. There's a lighter area right here. I want to be sure and keep that. You know, it gets a little bit lighter right along down here. It's still dark, but it's not quite as dark as this area. See, I can come in here. We've talked about this before. I could come in here and I can manipulate the paint some. Oops, I don't like that area. So I'm going to take most of the water out of my brush. Keep that tip moist. There. Okay, that's looking fairly decent. There's that little area right there. I don't have that. Let's see. As we've been working too, the paper has begun to dry a little bit. I want this edge to be softer there too. But see, I want that little dark spot here. And, oh, let's bring this dark across here. That should be darker. All right, so I need to get careful that I don't start making bad things happen here. So I'm going to soften this edge just barely, and I need to soften that edge. And, oh, I think this is about right. Might get a little lighter right there. Now this whole area needs to be a little bit darker. Just a tiny bit darker. I need to be careful with this. You could dry in between. You know, you don't have to accomplish all of this in one whack. You could do part of that, dry it, and then come back and do some more. And that's probably a better strategy for particularly if you're new at this. Okay, let's squeeze that out and see what we could pull up here. Maybe add, see, I've just barely touched the water with the corner of my brush. Maybe add a little bit of water there. Remember, this was already a fairly dark shade. I could do a little something to this. I think I need a little bit more of a transition there. There, that'll make me happy right there. So maybe that's enough. Doesn't mean that spot's kind of light. That'll need touching up at some point. It doesn't mean that, okay. See, we've got a shadow that comes up the nose here. Is that still wet? No, it's not. It's not wet enough. Never mind. I need to dry this. So what I'm going to do instead of drying it is I'm going to come over here and work on the baby's nose. Let's pre-wet that. And if I'm careful, because this is really starting to dry over here, but I don't want to get water on it. What I can do is I can just very carefully come real near the edge. And this, again, that might be something where you might want to have this dried. Okay, so again, I got him pretty wet. This little, I started calling him a puppy. He's not a puppy, he's a coat. He actually has spots that are showing there. So if we get a little bit of a hard edge, it'd probably be okay. I'm going to try to avoid that. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, sometimes I do what just starts to happen. If I see something happening that I like, I go with it. And if I don't like it, I don't go with it. He's also got a little bit more brown right there. We could show that or not. I've also got his muzzle a little bit darker to start out with. So now I am noticing, let's come along here, here. And he's got that little bit of a chin, or I think that's what that is. I couldn't really tell. So if we just have a dark in there, it'll work. Sometimes if you have just a dark shape and you don't know what it is, it's okay as long as you just imitate the dark shape. Just a little bit of a shape there. It's a little darker. And then this up in here is a little bit darker. I think I'm going to add water to that. Thin that out. I don't have this as wet as I did over here because this is smaller. The smaller area you're working with, the less water you can afford to have in there. Okay, I don't want that light shape there. Let's pull a little color over. That's probably okay for right here. I think I'm going to leave that like that. What could we start doing with these manes? Because we do have, I had to have all this mixed up. And we could work on that. So one of the things I want you to notice about hair, don't think about individual hairs all the time. You see this highlight running down through here? Okay, you want to keep that highlight. That's not a lot of little strokes. That's not, let me show you what it's not. It's not something like all of that. Oh my God, don't do all of that, okay? It's bigger shapes. Oh, this is really, I've got that pretty strong. I can't get. It's really bigger shapes of light and shadow. So it might be something like that. This might be the highlight in between, which wouldn't be white, but it would be lighter. See, and you get something a little more like that. Light and shadow. Don't think strands of hair. If your left brain is thinking strands of hair, it will force you to do it, even though you said you didn't want to. I know your left brain. I know my left brain is just cranky. It doesn't listen. Okay, so I'm loading the brush up this time. And I notice right here under the edge of the hair, it is darker, this little shaded. You know what? Let's look at this a little more closely with the... Okay, here's the edge of the hair here. And then it's doing this. And it's mostly coming over this way. And yeah, and then that's the ear. Okay. Sometimes I have to look at the picture and reorient myself. So that's all going to be more brown. If I make just some individual fat strokes, that'll look more like clumps of hair. So let's do that. And then let's take our water neutral brush while that's still wet. That's really strong paint on dry paper, so you want to get to it pretty fast. And let's soften the edge. If you notice, I'm making strokes in the direction that the hair grows, but I'm not making a lot of little thin lines. Okay, that's the beginning of a mane. Let's do over here. And quite frankly, I don't understand this part either. I think that this is part of the back that it's got. I don't understand quite. It's got mane hair or something. I'm just going to treat it like it's the mane and not try to make a distinction there. I think there's sort of a ridge of muscle or something there along the back that has some mane to it. But I'm not going to try to distinguish that. So again, soft edge, and you see how I'm turning the brush sideways. So I can make some strokes the direction that the hair is growing. Okay, so let's try. If I turn my picture this way, I'm going to turn the piece that I'm working from that way too. This looks black here, but it's not going to be black when it's dried. Now let's try this. You could dry before you do this. just make that dark. You could come along and have some fun with a few errant strands of mane, which I think would be fun. We'll do that in just a second here. Let's do some just big simplified shapes first. And I think I'll soften this area. I don't know if I'm going to like this. I haven't ever done something like this before, quite. Or that I remember. Let's put it like that. Okay, so I've got that little brush with a real fine point. You could come along and throw a few hairs out here. You know, I was going to put a green background in there. Well, we'll see. Here, this goes over that ear. Probably the kind of thing I should have saved for last. Yeah, a few stray hairs. This looks really awful right now, but it's because it doesn't have the darks in next to it. This will force you to have to get a really dark brown going here in order for this mane to not stand out in a really odd looking way. Okay, let's take care of the baby too. You know, I might stick with this little fine brush here for a few minutes. Whoop. Now see, that could turn into a lot of little hairs, right? And that's what we want to avoid at all costs. Because that will look terribly amateurish. And he didn't have that many hairs there, and I've gone and made a mess, so I have to put some mane here. You could pay more attention to what you're doing. I'm too busy talking. Okay. Let's go back to this. So then he's got a spot there where you're not seeing much of any mane at all. And then he's got a lot out here. Let's get this edge nice and clean. And then his mane is caught up under that halter. And then here it is, breaking out the other side. Here we go. A little moppy top guy. This up here is a lot thinner, I think. Or it's lighter gray, something. See, I am making my strokes in the direction the hair grows. But that's not the same thing as making a lot of little scrawny lines in there. Let's just do this for now. I think I want to soften that down here just a little bit. Okay, we're getting some darks in. Where could we go next? Oh, let's go to the eye area. The eye area and down. Is this showing up in the video? The eye area and down through here. Let's just wet all of that. See what we can do here. Oh, well, I didn't wait. You know, we need to wait. Wait. And then squeeze it out and pull up the excess moisture. So I've got something mapped out here already with my pencil. Let's get some of these shapes in here. Oh, well, that looks rather strange, doesn't it? I think we'll go ahead, because this area is wet, let's go ahead and pick up a little of our brown. Remember our really dark brown? Let's do a little shape over here with the brown. Did I wet that up there? I don't think I did. No, I didn't. I shouldn't have done that then. Okay. So it's all creeping fuzzy. Let's make a water neutral brush. I think this doesn't need to be any lighter. So I didn't squeeze out my brush enough to pull paint up. I just want to move the paint around. There are more distinct little areas in here that I could put in, but right now I need just an overall value. In fact, I think I'm going to do a little bit. Whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe that wasn't so good. Okay. Don't like it? Well, let's take a water neutral brush. Let's take a lot of the water out of it. Let's just pull a little of it up. Yeah, okay, I want more gray. There. Okay, that's nice. How about if we go ahead and start getting a little bit more dark in over here. And by that, I mean I'm just going to pull the dark gray right in along this edge. This is just the beginning. There'll be more color on top of this. This will get us some shadow between the head and the neck. And then we're just going to soften that edge a little bit. Like that. We could put a lot more color down here too. Oh, it's never ending. This should be dry enough. Just put a little bit, oops, a little bit more of the gray down in here. Yeah, okay, down this way. That's just to help us get it really dark later. Think of it as some undercolor. Okay, I'm going to stop for a while. I need to see how long this has been.